start with the principles. I live in Italy. My country is part of the European Union, so I have as a principle the ones that were developed in Europe. So the European environmental policy is in general based on the principle of precaution and prevention and rectifying pollution at source, and on the principle that polluter pays. So the UE, the European Union, faces complex environmental issues ranging from climate change to biodiversity loss to reduce depletion and pollution. And this is the Article 191 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. So we are starting from the very principles. In Europe was developed the Waste Framework Directive that requires that waste are managed without endangering human health and harming the environment, without risk to waters, air, soil, plants, or animals, without causing a nuisance through noise and odors, and without adversely affecting the countryside of places of special interest. We know that these are principles. We can try our best to respect the principle, and they are important. It is important that they are stated. The waste hierarchy is here reported in this picture. Started before the production of the waste. So the product prevention of waste is the first step of the waste hierarchy, and this is a concept that we will be back many times during this presentation. So, after principles, some definitions. Waste for the European Waste Framework Directive is any substance or object which the holder discard or intends or is required to discard. And this is as far the definition of waste that we have in Europe, we share in Europe. And another important definition is who produce the waste. The waste producers is anyone whose activities produce waste, the original waste producer, or anyone who carries out processing, mixing, or other operations resulting in a change in the nature or composition of waste. So, a word that can try to summarize what is important when you have to manage waste is responsibility. And in the Framework Directive, we have two kinds of responsibility. The responsibility of the producer of the good that originates the waste, and it is called extended producer responsibility, and it's a scheme that requires that this producer take the responsibility for the entire life cycle of their products, and in particular at the end of the product's life. And before the moment in which a good becomes a waste, you have the producer of the waste. These are probably very theoretical questions, but it's important for our webinar today, and we will be back even to this concept. So we have found that the waste is something that the holder have to or intend to or force is required to trash. So we are talking about a system which is called the linear economy. An economy in which finite resources are extracted to make a product and are used, generally not in their full potential, and then thrown away. This is the economy in we are still living. But fortunately, there is something more. Something more could be circular economy. Because I imagine you could be quite tired, so I had make this interaction game to think together. So, what could be circular economy? So, I ask you to link. I think I can. Okay, let me check if I can share in the chat this link. Okay, let me check. Where is the chat? Here. Okay, here. Okay, I also live in other some minutes this okay QR code if you prefer, you have the possibility to answer with a word or with a definition what is a circular economy. I'm sorry, but I'm not the only one who have to work this afternoon. You have to make your active job this afternoon. So I just wanted to arrive together to this definition. There is no a good answer, a bad answer. Then at the end, we will go and try to see what can be the result of common thinking. I go and find how, okay, no answer as far. So I ask you if, okay, one answer, but I don't want to show you the answer before everyone has answered. Please tell me if you have technical problem to write down your answer. If the link is working. I also ask Katyusha if I can help in this.
No, I'm using the form and
Okay.
it works perfectly.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. We are 30, you said, so I can think we could wait for at least 15. I don't want to throw too much time, but I think it is nice to compare the answers. So, six. At least 10. It's not a test. You don't win anything. So, okay, is there something in the chat? Is it? Okay. Could you please, Afuva? I hope I pronounce it correctly. Your name. Is it possible for you to fill the this form? Seven. Okay, so I can do it for you. Good. I don't think I don't think that if I see the answer, I can feel.
No, I will do it for you.
Thank you. Okay, if 8, okay. 9, okay, 10, and we will see. Okay. I don't know if Katyusha, you can again help or.
Yes, I'm doing. Don't worry.
Thank you very much.
I'm your technical hand.
Thank you. Okay. 11. Wow. We can go and share the answers. Let me. Okay. Answers and present. Okay. Okay. So the main word was products, system, and waste. Okay, product, system, and waste. That's nice, I think. And there's probably it's a system that collect that link waste and products. So let go back to the presentation. Okay. Here. Okay, so thank you for playing with me. I made this little game not only to make you wake up, to keep you wake up, but because there is no one single definition of circular economy. The concept is still evolving, and there are many definition, and when someone say circular economy, another person could think to something else. That's because a very young concept, and it is still still evolving. This is the definition that the European Parliament set up, that a model of production and consumption which involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, and recycling existing materials and products as long as possible. In this way, the life cycle of product is extended. In practice, it implies reducing waste to a minimum. It's a very long and full of words definition. To show that, in effect, there is no one single definition, I should use this work that I think, the study that I think is very interesting and was published in 2017. That is an analysis of 114 definitions of circular economy. And I also put here this picture because this story remembers an old legend in which at a group of blind people was presented an elephant none of them have never experienced. So they started to touch this elephant that in our case is the circular economy, and this one said, "Oh, it's like a wall," and this blind man said, "Oh no, it's like a column or like a tree." And someone that touched the tail said, "No, it's like a snake. An elephant is absolutely like a snake," and so on. Since there is two possible ending of the story. The first ending is that all these blind people started to fight because everyone knew that he was right, or they started to listen and they learned something more about this elephant. And at the end, together, they tried to understand this complex concept. So I think and I hope that in general, the second ending of the story is the best, the sharing experience to understand complex concepts. So this is this study that I presented is a study gave at the end his personal definition of circular economy, and this is very complete in a sense after the analysis of 114 definitions. So it's an economic system that replaces the end-of-life concept with reducing, alternative reusing, recycle, and so on. And there is this concept that it operates at micro level, at meso level, and at macro level. So like cities and region. And we know that we are in the middle between micro level and meso level as university, and has the aim to accomplish sustainable development, thus simultaneously creating environmental quality, economical prosperity, and social equity for the benefit of the current and the further generation. It is enabled by novel business model and responsible consumers. So the responsibility come again. There is another definition, and there is the conceptualization of circular economy, and one of the main reference for circular economy is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. This butterfly model is very, very interesting in my opinion. I don't want to explain by myself this diagram, but I wish you listen it directly from the source. So I am trying to share this, and please tell me if you can.
The circular economy keeps products, materials, and components in use at their highest value at all times. Ultimately seeking to decouple economic growth and development, it does so by distinguishing between two types of cycle. In the technical cycles, products, components, and materials are kept in circulation in the economy for as long as possible. In the biological ones, the strategy is to restore nutrients into the biosphere while rebuilding natural capital. Technical cycles are usually for products made from non-biodegradable materials such as metals. The most effective technical cycles involve maintaining and reusing products. This way, the value of a product is preserved and its usage length is increased. For instance, repairing a car or arranging a carpool so that a car is shared between several people is less resource-intensive than building additional cars. Even when a user no longer needs a product, it might still be reused by others by reselling it or redistributing it to different markets. Once a product can no longer be reused as is, most of its value can still be retained by refurbishing or remanufacturing it. For example, a car manufacturer can remanufacture the engine and other components of cars that are no longer usable. If it's impossible to reuse, refurbish, or remanufacture a product, the materials in that product can be recycled. When recycled, the value of the product itself is lost, but the value of the materials is preserved. Biodegradable materials such as food or wood-based products can be cycled in biological cycles. These materials are renewable by nature, but further value can be created by cascading them for additional applications in different value streams. In a biorefinery, conversion processes can produce high-value chemicals and fuels. Organic materials that can't be used further can be composted or anaerobically digested to extract valuable nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and micronutrients. Important examples of materials that can go through this cycle include household food waste or sewage sludge. By leveraging these recovery strategies, systemic leakages and negative externalities can be minimized. Ultimately, a circular economy is about getting the most value from the resources we have by keeping them at their highest utility and value.
Okay, so let's go back. So this is an important concept. I think the two wings of the butterfly are completely different and should be considered different. And the caterpillar, the linear economies, is symbolized in the middle of the image. So what we have to do is to make this caterpillar become a butterfly. The circular economy, according to Ellen MacArthur Foundation, is based on three principles driven by design. Design is very important. The principles are eliminate waste and pollution, circulate products and materials at their highest value, and regenerate nature. This is in particular the left wings of the butterfly. So what we are saying is that we need systemic thinking, and that waste and resource can be seen as two faces of the same coin. But this is not really a new concept. Well, I don't know if you can completely see. Yes, I think so. Because the circular economy was known from centuries as the principle of mass conservation. We have some pictures and references just to show that the idea to use and reuse the idea of circular economy has stronger physical and philosophical roots than the idea of finite growth of linear economy. So how can we make a caterpillar become a butterfly? So how can we close the loop? There were developed many methods and strategies. The first one, the very early one, is called the 3R method, the reduce, reuse, recycle method. And then we arrived to 5 R's and then 9 R's, and the strategies is refining. This is again that study that I find it very illuminating, very interesting, and in this study the strategies are 10, and the first one is refuse. So the first, the best idea is to make the product redundant by abandoning its function or by offering the same function with a radically different product. But if we cannot do the R0, we can rethink. We can use the product more intensive, for example, by sharing. We can reduce, increase efficiency in product manufacture or use by consuming fewer natural resources and materials. A consumer can reuse a discarded product of another consumer, which is still in good condition and fulfills its original function. I want to make you notice that the smaller are the here, where the butterfly. Okay, these circles. The smaller is the circle. The more saving, more you are more saving energy. So it is more efficient in using energy, maintenance compared to reuse, distribute, and so on. And the last is recycle. In fact, you can see that the 8R is recycle. And there are also the definition of what is repair, what is refurbish, remanufacturing, repurpose. There are small differences, but interesting, and it's important to judge a strategy with this possible scale. The first three, you have smarter product use and manufacture. From R3 to R7, you have extended the lifespan of product and its parts, and at the end you can reuse the material, but not the function of the original product. So this is a good way to put in order what is best for material saving and energy saving. So there are many methods and strategies to close the loop, and I just wrote down some of those. And many of those are superposition, they are similar idea. And the question is why we all know we are using some resources and we have a finite planet, so there are some boundaries that we have to respect, that even if we don't like, but there is some constraints. So a good way, I think, to understand this in an intuitive way is the overshot day. We are the overshot day is the day of the year in which the Earth biocapacity to provide for to renew its resources is finished. So we are consuming resources that are not anymore reproduced. Nowadays, last year, it was at the end of July. So we all know this, but it was important to remember that the principles of mass conservation means also that we have some Earth planet boundaries. But what can we do as universities? First of all, try to be an example and try to understand our systems. In university can be considered like small towns where students and staff spend part of their day working, studying, eating, and in many cases living on campus. In my university, the University of Bologna, is a very ancient university and is very distributed. The buildings are very distributed inside the city. But I know that many other universities, and probably also your university, has some university campus where people can live, can spend times in the gardens, can study, can also eat, and can spend most of his days inside the same campus. So university has the duty to try to manage the waste that are produced in its buildings, in its activities. So let's try to analyze this waste. The most difficult and what I start with are the hazardous and not hazardous laboratory waste. They are produced during teaching, research, or even medical assistance activities. For example, here in Bologna, we have the veterinary department that has many lab, many medical assistant activities. And there are some other hazardous waste which are close to those of laboratories, but are not completely and not only produced in laboratory. For example, batteries, oils, gas tanks, and lamps. Lamps are produced in every building of the university. And also a particular kind of waste are discarded electric and electronic equipment or bulky waste. When furniture is broken or cannot be repaired, it becomes a bulky waste. Office and classroom waste, which are very, very similar to household waste and are salted collection, like the kind are paper, plastic, cardboard, glass, metal. And the organic waste that are mainly two kinds of waste. The one from building, student, personal, from the canteens, from cafes, and the ones that are produced during the maintenance of the gardens, garden waste, and construction and demolition waste, because it happens that there are new buildings in construction in the universities. So let's try to apply, just as an exercise, the strategy that I mentioned before to this kind of waste. For example, refuse, one can think, oh no, refuse, it's not possible for hazardous or laboratory waste. But we can, for example, try to think how to do experiments without substituting a particular substance. For example, if it is very dangerous, very toxic for human health, with other substances less hazardous, less dangerous. We can rethink about use a shared printer in other cases, for example, in discarded electronic equipment. We can rent a print, use in a sharing way, shared among many offices, and then give back to the company that can remanufacture, repair when it's broken, and we can buy the use instead of buying the object. So these are the strategy that we can apply at every single waste that are produced into the universities. The other very important thing in universities is, and it is very close to this first R's, is a strong interconnection between procurement department, or between people that as a job make some purchasing, and the waste management. Okay. So when you buy, you make very, very important action and prevention of waste. So you can buy thinking not only to the use of what you are buying, but also of the end of life of the product in order to close the loop of the material. These are some of the important questions you have to make when you buy. How long will it last? Can I rent it instead of buying? Could it be reused inside the university, outside the university, or recycled, for example? So as you can see, I'm not giving you answer, but only questions. But sometimes questions are more important, in my opinion, than answers. To help this process, Europe developed the green public procurement. In green public procurement, the GPP, there are some criteria that are designed to make it easier for public authorities to purchase goods, services, and works with reduced environmental impacts. So usually there are selection criteria, technical specification, award criteria, and contract performance clauses. I left here the bottom for you the link. So as you can, if you need some inspiration, you can go and check some ideas for the reduction at the source of waste. For example, there are some strategies of purchasing for textiles, office building design, food catering service and vending machine. I just put here some example of what could interest some universities. Okay, all what I said has developed in an exchange that I had the pleasure to have with other colleagues that make my job in different university, and this connection was possible thanks to this network, the university network for sustainability, the one that Katyusha mentioned presenting me. There's a strong connection with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. In particular, the responsible and consumption and production, the goal, sustainable goal 12, is the one that is connected to the working group that now is called Resources and Waste. The Ruth was born just 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, and this is the steps of the path to formalize the network. I think that networks are very, very useful to evolve quickly. The RUS network goals are to harmonize institutional activities and improving the management of the members' environmental and social aspects, creating a community, promoting projects, developing a multidisciplinary approach, training and updating, and engage the stakeholder and preparation of documents, collaborate with public institutions as well as public and private business. These are the goals, and the governance is made by a coordination committee. Few university are in the coordination committee, and the General Assembly is composed by the all representative. Nowadays, the president of the coordinating committee is Professoressa Patrizia Lombardi, which is deputy rector of Politecnico of Turin in Italy. And the most important thing is that the way in which it works is the working groups, thematic working groups that started in different moments. The one that I work in is resources and waste. We started from 2016. I had the honor to be the first coordinator up to 2000, I can't remember if 19 or 20, but yes, for some years. And the most important thing is that the process that I was talking about, so the transformation from a linear economy, from a linear thinking to a circular thinking is part of my story, because in 2019 the actual coordinator and me, we tried to, we thought that it was good to make to ask to people if we wanted, the participant of the working group, if we wanted to change from waste to resources and waste. The name I think is quite important to understand the concept. So that was a topic moment of our evolution. Now we have 69 universities represented. The coordinator is a very friend of mine, and Dr. Eleonora Perotto from the Polytechnic of Milan, and is about 160. It's there's different from what before said Katiuscia, because there are some members that are not completely formalized, but give support only in some cases. And one thing that I have always considered very important is that part of these people are teaching staff, and part of these people is professional staff. For example, I'm a technician at the University of Bologna, and I think that the dialogue should be in many directions, and in many different people with different expertise can share his experience and arrive farther. Here are summarized the goals. So we want to increase the fields of collaboration, like the network, the main network, not only in this one. Okay, probably a mistake, or I'm talking too much, or was a mistake.
No. I'm sorry for my mistake, so don't worry.
Okay, perfect. So we wanted to arrive to interact with institutions to adjust some legislation inherent to waste management and circular economy inside the university, because as we saw before, one of the main constraints of the evolution is that law is always one step back respect to the evolution of thought. So we need to interact with institutions to adjust the legislation. And in any case, it's important to raise awareness among university communities and population the themes of waste management in a perspective of a circular economy. There are many sub-working groups. I am active in the one which is free of charge transfer of furniture, because many universities, we have very big, we are public universities, so we have some rules that for which we cannot simply donate our old furniture, but we have to make some new regulation, and we have to afford an old mentality which not allow simply to make this kind of donation, but and sometimes when it is easier to trash something instead of donate it, we really need to review and renew the rules, the rules of our job. One of the idea that we developed for we transformed the waste management to the name of our group, from waste to resource and then waste, we starting to develop this idea of that a waste manager should be a resource and waste manager, and that has to learn not only to manage special waste and has competence that could be recognized in classification of waste, hazardous waste, so all this technical competence, but also direct connection with the procurement purchase office and ensure application and development of green public procurement, which in Italy are mandatory. We decided to, in every case, 100% of case, when a public institution need to make a procurement, it should be green procurement with the rules designed from Europe. The development of special projects on waste prevention and reduction. This is the figure that we figured out. I apologize if I hadn't the time to translate, but I just wanted to show you some experience from all the Italians universities. So this is in Genoa. And this is a center that the University of Genoa developed for reuse and repair, and it is called the Repair Cafe. It's a sort of party. It's a place where you can organize book crossing, repair together, and teach and learn repairing for every single object that who comes can repair. So this is one of the experience, and it's called Repair Cafe. Another is a software that was developed from the University of Udine, which make this software to donate the computers and mobiles and tablets and monitors and every equipment is not anymore useful in Udine University. This is another possibility that was the swap day in which people exchange unused goods. And this is a reuse of bins. So they were refreshed with new colors and all the to improve and better communicate which should be the the correct sorted collection, they changed the color and refurbished the bins in all the campus, which is quite wide. This is an experience in which some tires from bicycles were reused and repurposed. The material is repurposed for, it's an example of upcycling. So these tires are transformed in a product which was a fashion product, for example, some belts or other objects. So it's upcycling because it was recycled, but with more economic value of the object. This is a creative reuse. It is repurposing even in this case. There are some buns that were used for make bags and pen cases. And this is the left wings of our butterfly. It's the possibility of mechanical treatment for optimize the formation, the rot of material and produce good compost for the garden in the University of Padua. This is a cycling officine in which it can be repaired and assembled, and students teaches how to maintain the bike to other students. This is a particular case in which the single-use objects were banned from labs in Cagliari, and we come back in many cases. They come back at washable laboratory equipment. Here we went back again to this tissues for mechanical officing, in which we put in this bin, and there is a external company that take, wash, and put and gave back. So we avoid the production of this kind of dangerous waste. It is an hazardous waste. This is my experience in the network, and just let me say just the last words about my experience in the University of Bologna, my university. Just to present it, it's a big university with almost 100,000 students, with 8,000 international students. And as I said you before, we have very, very big square meter, very high quantity of square meters of building in Bologna, Cesena, Forlì, Rimini, Ravenna. It is in many, there are different cities in the same region. The question is that we have, like you can see here, this is a town of about 400, I think, 400,000 people. And we have some, this is the historical center of the town, and we have some buildings all dispersed into the city. So we are not a university campus. The waste management in University of Bologna started about more than 25 years ago with the first organization of lab waste in a technical unit, which is called NUTER. I'm the coordinator of the NUTER, and since waste transport should be authorized, this is a national law, the university organized local units that was identified not by the address, but not by the department, but only by the address for the lab waste management. So departments had to collaborate to share people experience and to manage together their waste. It is not always that simple collaboration. But in this way, they were in a sort forced for this geographical configuration, and it was really a good thing because this was the basis in which we developed our system. Every unit had one or two expert technicians, which could work in one or the other department that share in the same area laboratories. And today we have about 50 local units. In 2011, a University Regulatory Act formally defined roles, attribution, and responsibilities. And in the following years, there have been developed formal procedures for lab waste management. The main procedures in 2015 were collected in a manual, which was revised in 2020. And now, this year, we are having a big revision of the Regulatory Act with a new assessment that should reorganize every kind of waste. This is the main question for developing the Regulatory Act. We started to think who is the producer of the waste in order to assess correctly the responsibilities. For example, for laboratory waste researchers and teaching researchers are the only person, the main persons that know which kind of substances are involved, which kind of chemist is involved in a waste. And that is very important to correctly separate and manage. In case of batteries, oil, gas, tanks, it depends. In the case of equipment, electronic equipment, or bulky waste, in the formal consignee of the equipment is the responsible, or in some cases, when we try to understand who is the producer and the main responsible, we look at the consignee of the spaces. For example, one of the waste produced in a department as the head of the department is always responsible because he can make the rules and make people respect the rules that are stated in the university. And for the office and classroom waste, student personnel are often responsible, and the producer. For municipal waste, the households are responsible and are the producer. So this is, I don't want to analyze everything, but the question is that if you follow the waste, you can follow the responsibility, you can share the responsibility and understand who can make the waste be well managed or prevented, and he is the responsible and can act in the proper way. So that is our fil rouge. One of the main responsibility of the producer is the classification, and for municipal waste it's quite simple. For hazardous waste in lab, there are many complicated rules to applicate in classification. One is written in our case in the Waste Directive in Europe. We have the European Waste Code, which has a capital captures from 1 to 20, and it is useful because it ensures that similar principles are applied over the whole life cycle of materials, and you can report and count, understand, and have statistics if you use this classification. But it's not enough, because when you classificate and you send to any plant waste, you also have to say which kind of hazard is can be has the waste. For example, to manage a flammable waste is very, very different compared to manage a corrosive waste or infectious waste. And this is not enough. We also have to classificate our waste with ADR, the agreement concerning the international carriage of dangerous goods by road, which is another regulation classification that we have to apply to our waste. Here I put this is an international agreement, which is voluntary, and these three countries, Spain, Italy, and Uganda, signed this agreement. The other countries, which are represented here, are not didn't sign this agreement. I just wanted to make you aware that in these countries, universities that send hazardous articles, materials, and included waste, the sender is legally responsible for classifying, packaging, marketing any dangerous good. Second this accorded with this agreement, and it is important to have an advisor. You have to nominate an advisor for dangerous goods safety, even every institution, not only private company. What we did, as I told you before, is to collect all the procedures in this manual from the first one. Needed about 1 year of many people from the network, the technical waste technical network of our university, to publish this manual for waste management. And these two parts, the first is more theoretical, and the second is operative procedures and classification of most common lab waste. Another thing that is very useful and important is to track your waste from the moment in which they are produced to the moment in which they are stored to the moment in which they are sent to the destination plant. Data tracking tools and software are very, very useful. We have the opportunity, thanks to a colleague from the math department, to make an homemade software which is called Alma Rusco. Rusco is the jargon word for waste here in Bologna. I hope that my presentation is concluded. I hope that in some case you had some ideas for waste management or for waste prevention. I just wanted to finish with what I have learned so far.